Howdy folks, Siegfried here, game designer, co-creator of Everyday Heroes, and Salty Sea Captain for SigTrent Games. Today I'm going to tell you about what's going on with SigTrent Games in week 39, give you a little bit of game design advice, or in this case opinion, and talk about my life and gaming in general. So let's start out with what's going on with SigTrent Games. The big news is Shotgun Fantasy. I got final draft finished up just at the end of last week, so I'm really excited about that. Everything is written, everything is tidied up. I am sending it off to my editor, Eric, who is going to take a look at it and try to find any problems and clean it up and make it super, super shiny. And then it will be ready for layout. In the meantime, I'm going to go on a hunt for some art and try to fill out the book. I need to buy some stock art, which means art that isn't going to be exclusive to our book, but should be nice. So that stuff is just a little bit cheaper to acquire than to have custom pieces made. Also a little bit more timely, so everything should work out. We plan to build up our own catalog of art that we will use, and there are custom pieces, including the cover and some of the character illustrations for Shotgun Fantasy, but we're going to need some stock art to kind of fill the book out and make it feel really presentable and cool like that. So you will see it either in PDF and or on Sidekick when the time comes. How long is that going to be? I'm not sure, but hopefully maybe before the end of the year, but right around then. So be in time for the holidays, hopefully, and you can grab Shotgun Fantasy. Everyday Pirates, I started working on that. I got some words down. This is, I think, going to come out in January for Evil Genius Games. It's just a small little book to play pirates. I'm having a really good time doing the pirate research. I love research. It's one of my favorite parts of making a book. And, you know, I know a little bit about pirates, but I wanted to really get a deep understanding. I won't be able to put a lot of the stuff that I got from my research directly into the book, because it's only like 7,500 words. And I want to put a lot of game mechanics in there. There'll be good, fun stuff to enhance your game. So I'm going to try to take everything I've learned and introduce a lot of the knowledge through the game mechanics themselves. Something I like to do. So, you know, feat description or description of the background or something. I'll have a little bit of tidbit about the world of pirates. There is just going to be some paragraphs of text talking about pirates for folks that, you know, have a general idea but don't really know the historical context and some of the tactics and how pirates operate. That'll be in there. There's going to be a little bit about privateering, which is a lot like piracy, but a little bit different. And also the people that they're dealing with, the merchants and the naval flotillas that you'll be dealing with as a pirate, etc. The authorities, shall we say. All right, so that's going well. I haven't really worked on other projects too much for the sort of top secret project. I'm waiting to get some midpoint feedback so that I can get a little bit better direction on that, although I am going to be doing some writing for it this week. I'm going to try to write a little bit on all the projects this week and move things forward, except, of course, Shotgun Fantasy, in which case I will be looking for art. Although much of the week has already passed me by, I'm a little late getting this video in. We had a power outage this morning when I was going to record, and normally I record on Tuesday, but I just wasn't feeling it. I wrote the script, but I didn't do the recording, so. But we're getting around to it, but a lot of little delays this week, and power outages definitely don't help. Had one of those last week as well. It's been very windy and stormy here in the fall season. Usually not particularly dangerous. We did have like a lightning strike that shook the whole house. It was really cool. That happened this morning shortly before the power went out. All right, so what's the game design tip of the week this week? It's not exactly a tip, because this is an area that I'm not exactly an expert, but I'm going to give a little bit of my perspective and advice and things that I like and don't like about this subject. And the subject is random tables. So these are tables that you get in an RPG. They could be random encounter tables, are the most common, but I've been making random name generators, random shop generator names, things for personality traits, all kinds of different stuff. And I don't usually make a lot of these. You don't see them very much in Everyday Heroes, in the projects that I worked on at least. But it's something that is pretty popular with people, so I want to talk about random tables since I've been working on them. All right, let's start out with things that I don't particularly like about random tables and why I don't use them a whole lot in my books. Sometimes, I'm not going to say that these are really good reasons not to like them in general. They're just my personal takes, okay? First of all, wasted work. So, especially if you're going to do an adventure or something like that and you have a bunch of random encounter tables. For me, you will be writing a whole bunch of encounters and things that are going to be happening that will never actually get used, or they won't get used by each person that is going to experience the adventure, right? So to me, in a sense, it feels like a little bit of a waste to write a lot of material that may or may not ever appear in the adventure, not through the character's choices, but just through sort of random chance. Now, I think this is not necessarily a good philosophy to have because since a lot of people will probably play the adventure over time, you are hoping eventually all that material will get used by somebody and have a cool experience with it. And I've seen this firsthand because the Ego adventures were written that way to have some random elements so they could be replayable by the same people. And of course, people report back on this or that encounter they liked or didn't like, and things like that. So you know that all of them get played. So even though to me sometimes it feels like wasted work, it probably isn't. All right. Next up, and this is probably the number one reason, I like kind of crafted stories, which doesn't mean I want to write an adventure where I know exactly what's going to happen, but I am interested in trying to set a pace and a tone and a feel for an adventure. And if you have random elements that are too wildly different from one another, it is possible that they kind of break that tone and that feeling, and it's not part of a well-crafted story. They tend to be not tied into everything else, and I like little strands of ideas tied through everything. Now, again, this is something that you can still do by having multiple random encounters have different elements that are tied into different parts of the adventure and so forth, and that would definitely be the way to do it. But I often feel that they're not really done that way, and it takes quite a bit of extra effort when I could put that effort towards content that I know will be integral to the adventure, right? All right, so it kind of ties into that last one a little bit, I guess. Finally, I associate random tables with a kind of low immersion play that is not bad in any way, but is not really what I tend to go for when I'm role playing, which is to say the kind of hex crawl is just roll the dice, see what you fight some monsters, roll random treasure, get your treasure, and go forward. And it's not a bad style of play, but I'm a lot more of a storytelling game master. I'm a little bit more of a storytelling game designer, and I kind of, again, so that handcrafted feeling and then losing control of the narrative or not really having a narrative is something I don't enjoy as much. So it's still good for other people. It's just not my style, generally speaking. Okay, so those are my problems with random tables. Let's talk about all the good things that random tables can bring to a game, because I think it's more important to think about the positive tools, the positive aspects of the tools that you're using than the negative ones, all right? First of all, it's just entertaining for the game master. So game masters, one of the reasons I like luck in a game and high rolls and low rolls is because it surprises me. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. Maybe the bad guy goes down really easy. Maybe it's a real struggle. Maybe the players have an encounter and it almost defeats them and they have to run away. That kind of stuff is exciting for me. I didn't expect the story to go that way. I get to roll with punches, and it's kind of cool. And random tables can do that as well. You can go, oh, wow, this random table, and it could inspire you, which brings me to the next point, is something that happened on the random table that you didn't think about, that you weren't planning on doing, but there it was, and suddenly you get a brilliant idea that was inspired by that table to do this, that, or the other thing. Or maybe you're rolling up a random name for an NPC, and that name just instantly sparks to you a personality and a character, and that helps get you going. So they can be really good for that inspirational quality. I think they can be funny sometimes, especially random, like a random monster name generation table where you've got like 3 columns and each column, and then the mix and match between the two makes something funny. So one of the tables I was doing, it was mostly serious, and I mostly wanted the names to come out to something that people would go, oh yeah, that would be something that you would call that. However, I decided to throw at least 1 or 2 options in that, if they were included in the name, would make it a bit silly and ridiculous, but would still work with the other combinations to be something at least rational, right? Or rational in the sense that, you know, the sentence flows properly. However, would be silly and strange. And so I like to do some of those because I like the humor that comes out of random tables. Solo play is another big one. One of the things that I researched when starting SigTrent Games was to do a solo roleplay project or an adventure for everyday heroes. Still may well do that, but Anne dove really into that, did a bunch of research, and I did some research. And random tables are a big part of making solo play adventures feel organic and alive, like you, the player, are not necessarily in control, and there's another oracle kind of determining the path of the adventure. And so random tables are incredibly useful for that. Replayability. As I mentioned before, the Ego adventures had some random elements so that if you played the same adventure again, as you sometimes do in living campaigns, you would at least have some surprises and some different experiences as the adventure went on. So that's pretty cool. Now, Say, I don't think those did a great job tying into the adventure. They were location appropriate, but I do think I really like this idea, now that I've mentioned it, of trying to tie every random encounter to some plot element that's going on in the story, to provide, I don't know, a different experience, a different viewpoint on what's going on in the story. I think that's a pretty cool idea. Next, they can have a combo effect to increase information density. So, what does that mean? Well, basically, if you have a table, let's say, and you're going to roll three elements on the table, and it's 10. So, there's not just 10 possibilities, there's 10 times 10 times 10, which means 1,000 possibilities, right? So that's pretty cool. You've actually got like 1,000 different kinds of things that can happen with only 30 specific entries in a table. That is actually maximizing value rather than doing wasted effort. So if you can figure out a way to have these combos effects be rational and meaningful, then you can actually get quite a bit more content out of a book that way than you could otherwise. Finally, being lucky is fun and being unlucky is fun. In games, they create dramatic moments. So, random tables, like random loot tables, where you could get something really astounding unexpectedly, or maybe you get something really funny and ridiculous and not very good. That can be a lot of fun. It's that kind of gambling aspect, and it's sort of in all of our psychology. It's not as strong maybe with me as some people, but it certainly can be fun. And so, if the player knows that they're rolling on a table and they roll it really well and they get something really cool, then that can be pretty exciting for them. So it's a good game design tool that way. So random mutation tables are another really fun one for players when you're making a character. Find out what crazy thing is going to happen and then figure out how your character is going to build up on that. So ties back into that unexpected, but more for players than game masters. All right, so what are my tips for making tables? Again, I am not an expert on random tables. There are probably people who can give you a better lesson than me, but since I'm addressing the topic, I'm going to give you what advice I have. First is all, you need to decide whether it's going to be a bell curve or a linear curve. Linear curve is like a 1d20, so every number has the exact same outcome. And so 1 through 20 all have an equal chance of happening. A bell curve is when you roll multiple dice, like 3d6, and so the numbers in the middle, 10, 11, I think, 9, 10, 11, have very high chances of being rolled, as where 3 and 18 have very low chances of being rolled. It would be 6 times 6 times 6. I'm not going to do the math right now, but that's your chances, which is a lot harder than 1 in 20 to roll, which is why having all 18s on your character score is not very likely. At any rate, bell curves are really cool because if you have a situation where you're like, well, this is the common thing that would happen most of the time, and this is kind of rare, and this is super rare, then the bell curve is a perfect way to do that. You can assign a number to each one. Now, you can do that a little bit with a linear dice, so if you have a roll 20, and you can have 1 and 20 be something specific, but then you can have like 4 to 6 be one thing, and 19 to another thing be another thing. That works pretty good if you just have a couple things that you want to be a little bit more common than others, but you don't need that overall bell curve. So that can work out pretty good too. All right, multi-column column results. Now this is something I hadn't really thought of until I worked on the projects that I'm working on now. And to make some of these, which is where, for instance, a good one is a name generator, where you've got like a first name, a middle name, and then maybe a nickname or a last name, whatever it happens to be. And so they're all listed on the same table in 3 different columns. And then you roll 1 through 20 for the first one, and you roll 1 through 20 again, roll through 1 through 20. The reason it's kind of cool is you could just sort of read them straight across if you wanted to. I guess it'd be faster that way, but not as interesting or as random. But the main thing is just presentation-wise, it's all on one page. You don't have to go flipping around in order to reference different things. You just roll, roll, roll. It's right there. So I think that's just good for players. At first, when I was doing them, I laid each of them out separately, and then I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Let's put them together. And so I think that was a lot better. And then I looked at some other books. I'm like, oh yeah, they're doing the same thing. So seems smart. Next, just kind of goes with that is try to get your random tables on one page. I have seen some random tables like treasure tables and things. They go off on multiple pages. Sometimes that's necessary because you just have so many items. But I generally think it's better if you can, layout-wise and design-wise, to try and get everything for any one particular table onto one page. Now, if you move on to another table on the second page, it's like consult this subtable. Well, okay, that's fine. But I do like one page per table if you can manage it. How many results should you have? Well, the former can sometimes inform that. It just depends on what kind of dice you're rolling, of course. It's hard to have a table with 5 things unless you're going to assign multiple numbers to one of those items. So think about that in terms of the dice numbers. Generally speaking, if you want a good level of randomization, I think 10's kind of a minimum number of things. If you are trying to pick random, like a random body part or something, then that might make a D4 or a D6, however you're going to divide up the body and stuff. But if it's like these are inspirational tables, like content for game masters and things like that, I think you want more items generally, and you want to go 10 plus on that. Did a lot at 12, did some at 20, where I had a lot of ideas to put in there, that kind of thing. All right. Those are my tips for random tables and my thoughts on random tables. If you have thoughts on that, or you have any great tips, because, again, not an expert here on this subject, go ahead and share them with everybody. I'm sure they would appreciate it. All right, what have I been playing lately? The news is No Man's Sky. So we bought that a little while ago, saved it up for our anniversary. I talked about a little about that in my last video. And we had a fantastic time. We played for like 8-10 hours on our anniversary. And then been playing a fair amount after that as well. No Man's Sky is a really fun game. It's a space game where you start out on a random alien planet. It's mostly a crafting game. So you're going to craft things, you're going to survive. It has a lot of difficulty settings. So if you just want to kind of flaff about in the universe and just have a good time, you can set it on a very easy setting where materials are really easy to come by. I'm playing on just sort of standard normal setting because I didn't know the game very well. I would say it's pretty easy to survive. I have not been killed yet or starved or run out of resources. Resources feel very plentiful. There are rare things that you can go after, but the basic things you need to breathe and to run your spacesuit and your spaceship and stuff are kind of everywhere. So it's very easy. It just takes a little time to get the stuff that you need to do the thing that you have to do. And so you spend a lot more time trying to figure out what it is you want to do. What kind of cool spaceship you want to build, what sort of base you want to build, what kind of things you want to explore, what sort of aliens you might want to fight. Do you want to follow some of the storylines that they've got? And they've got quite a few different ones. So there's all kinds of different systems to engage with. I'd say the thing that's coolest about the game is you can dive really deep into it. Like there's a lot of systems and some of them are pretty complex. Or you can just sort of mess around and look at alien planets and find pets, battle spaceships, create a freighter fleet. There's all kinds of things you can do in the game. So really great sense of exploration. It's been around for 9 years. And the reason we jumped into it is because recent updates have made it even more popular than when it first came out. And I just heard wonderful things about it. Came out kind of a rough launch because there wasn't a lot to do in the game. Well, there's tons of stuff to do now. So definitely worth checking out. I like it a lot. I think it's a game I'll probably play for a long time and really enjoy. All right, Nomad Ann's Twitch channel. You can catch her playing No Man's Sky as well sometimes. Also, however, she's been playing a lot of Phasmophobia still because it's one of her favorite games. She finished up on Liminal Core Chapter 5 and is looking for a new liminal space / horror game to play on the channel since a lot of her audience is into that kind of game. Life in general, not a whole lot to say other than my anniversary was fantastic. We had great food and made some brownies that were killer good and such a good cook. And we had a grand time playing No Man's Sky, and I did absolutely no work on that day, and it was rather glorious. I had a great time. Been trying to get back on the saddle again. It's kind of hard to do sometimes after a day like that. I've been playing a little bit more No Man's Sky than maybe I intend to, but it's a lot of good fun, and it's been inspiring me, so that's cool. And still getting a lot of work done. I was so happy to get that milestone for Shotgun Fantasy where we finished the final draft. Work on a thing for like 4 or 5 months, and it's just so gratifying to say, hey, wow, I finished that. I did all the writing. This is a good piece of work. I can't wait to put it together so people can experience it the way I have. So, yeah, so that's all been pretty good, and I don't really have a lot else to add. It's been a cool week. The storms outside are blaring, so our power could go out at any time. I hope things are good wherever you are, and the weather is interesting but safe. All right, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.